Hi everyone, my name is Shannon Surikaku and I am the guest services coordinator for this 36th edition of the Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival presented by presented by Visual Communications. And I want to thank everyone for connecting with us today for C3 Converse, presented by Nielsen. I'd like to invite you to join us 2 weeks from today on October 30th for a special presentation by Nielsen's new Inclusion Analytics product, where we'll learn some insights around Asian American inclusion on TV and the new currency by which media will be measured. Again, thank you to Nielsen, our presenting sponsor for this year's C3 Converse. Now for our next artist discussion, I'd like to welcome our senior programmer, Isio Barlasa.
Mahalo, Shannon. I always wanted to say that during the festival. So thank you for the introduction. Welcome back, guys. My name is still ACL Barlasa, and like Shannon said, I'm one of the programmers here at the festival. If you've been hanging out with us, it's been a wonderful day of artist conversations with filmmakers presenting short film presentations. And this next conversation, we're going to sit down with filmmakers presenting nonfiction works, documentary filmmaking, which is totally my cup of tea. I love nonfiction storytelling, and I can't wait to get into this conversation. If you'd like to read the closed captions for this convo, we are dropping a link in the chat now. Click on that link and it will bring you to another window that will have a transcript of the audio in this convo. Now let's get into it. This is a program called Looking for Home. What do borders mean when it comes to family identity and security? If you guys have seen these short films, you'll see a common thread of how does family identity and security relate to your position in the globe, and what does that mean to your sort of family legacy? On that note, let's meet the filmmakers. I'd like to invite the artists to turn on their cameras and their mics, because when I do this, that means your cameras will turn on, and we'll all be in gallery view. And I will invite all of y'all to introduce yourselves. So I'm going to pass the mic and we'll start first with Seth. Go ahead, let us know your name, your film title, and where you're zooming in from.
Hi everyone, Seth Hernandez Ronquillo. They, them, I also use other gender pronouns. I'm the filmmaker behind Coverage, and I am zooming in today from the ancestral lands of the Tongva, the Tataviam, and the Chumash, also known as the San Fernando Valley.
Great, let's pass the mic to Amber.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Amber McClure, and I am the producer, director, editor of Finding Dohi, and I am zooming in from the island of Kauai in Hawaii.
Thank you for being here. Passing the mic to Danielle.
Hi, everybody. I'm Danielle Ayao. I'm the filmmaker behind But You're Not Black, and I'm in Toronto.
Yeah, like making me so hot seeing your hoodie. I mean, temperature hot, because it's so temperature hot in my neighborhood, Long Beach, California. Let's pass the mic to William.
Hi, I'm William Johnston Carter. I directed and edited Atukos Story, and I live in Los Angeles, in Culver City.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. So we're going to go around for a first round of questions. I'm going to invite first with Danielle. Just the title itself, But You're Not Black, next to your face.
Yeah.
You know, please tell us what the film is about, and also maybe your impetus to tell this story.
It's basically about myself and driven by people's inability to separate my skin color from my culture. I was kind of driven to write But You're Not Black, and it was something that I was told quite a lot growing up when I told people that I was Trinidadian. And yeah, I guess my impetus to write it was that. But also it started off, as terrible as this is to say, it started off as a little bit of a joke, because I was getting so much of these comments and I was getting so frustrated that I said, I'm going to make this documentary one day that tells the experience of the migration from China to Trinidad. And if anybody has any questions, I'm going to send them to this documentary. And it became true, I guess.
So if you haven't seen the film, it is sort of an exploration that's, I guess, anchored by different conversations. It's not just yourself. You have peers in your community who are of the same cultural heritage and ethnic background. Chinese Caribbean, like Chinese Jamaican, I think, is in there as well. What was their reaction to you wanting to tell this story? Were they like, I don't want you to, like, were they into it? Were they a little bit hesitant?
You know what? I think when anybody is talking about ethnicity and race and, their personal feelings about those subjects, they're hesitant. They're hesitant, but then I've had so much support as well from the community being like, yeah, we need to get this out here. We need to stop this nonsense. So I think
Thank
it
you so
was
much
positive. Yeah.
I do think it's a conversation that hasn't quite crested in sort of mainstream consumption. So I think the films like this or works like these, I think bring conversations home that people aren't yet ready to have. And using a film, you can start that at home. So thank you. Let's bounce over to Set, an equally important film. Can you tell us a brief synopsis for what the film is and how you found your subjects?
Yeah, I think at ACL Coverage is about the Health for All campaign in California, which is a campaign that seeks to expand healthcare access for all people who are low income in the state, regardless of their immigration status and age. And we were telling the story through the lens of two key protagonists, Trinidad Plasencia, who is one of the founders of the Health for All movement in California, and is an undocumented policy advocate in the state. And the other protagonist that we follow is Emma, who is a home care worker, an elderly Filipina undocumented immigrant herself. She takes care of other elderly people who are like years much older than her. But because of her immigration status, we're looking at the fact that she is not able to access the care she provides other people because of her status, like I said. And the way that I was able to meet my protagonists. Actually, there are people in my life before I even started filming. There's all these really amazing people in the community that I come from, being undocumented myself. And I often want to find ways to highlight stories of people that are already in my life that I think are often overlooked. And with Hector, we were working together in the Health for All campaign many moons ago. I've known them for 10 years. I was volunteering with the Filipino Worker Center, facilitating talking circles. And through that community is how I met Emma, who is a worker leader in the.
Thank you. Let's go ahead, pass the mic to William. Could you tell us a little bit of the film Atukos Story and how you came onto the project?
Sure. So Atukos Story is an animated short documentary, sort of humorous. It tells the story of Atsuko, who's a Japanese-American comedian who is formerly undocumented. For my day job, I work as a video producer for the nonprofit Define American, which uses culture change and the power of narrative to advocate for better representation of immigrants in the media. So we do a lot of work with Hollywood, consulting on television shows like Grey's Anatomy and Superstore and Orange is the New Black. We also work with news organizations on their portrayal of immigrants in the news, and we create original video productions. So we had worked before with Atsuko. We've organized a number of comedy nights that sort of showcase immigrant comedians. And we were looking to sort of help tell a story that, like, oftentimes immigration, especially undocumented immigration, is framed only from a Latinx issue and always framed around the border and border patrol and the wall. And the truth is there is a lot of diversity in the undocumented immigrant community, and the majority of undocumented immigrants today actually come through legal means, through airports or like legal ports of entry. So we were trying to look at a way to tell that story, and so we collaborated with Atsuko to tell her story in sort of a fun, easy, animated way. We like to talk about we like to deep fry the broccoli at Define American, so sort of sneak the facts in underneath. So if you can get people laughing, I mean, Atsuko is an incredible comedian and just like naturally funny on camera. So if you can get people laughing at her jokes, you can slip in some facts about the truth behind undocumented immigration.
Definitely. I'm a big fan of sort of combining different emotional experiences in order for messages to stick, especially such important messages like these. And I think my notes show that Atsuko might be joining. So when she comes into the ether Zoom God, we may turn on their camera. So just heads up for that. But let's now switch over to Amber. I'm not going to ask how you found your subject because I feel like you know where your subject lives. Please tell us, explain for the audience what your film is. It's called Finding Dohi, and tell us who Dohi is.
Sure. Yes, I had to dig really deep to find my main subject. So Dohi in the story is my great-grandfather, Eitaro Dohi, and he was an immigrant from Japan, and he traveled to Hawaii when he was 15 to work on a sugar plantation in Hawaii. And so the story is really one story of an immigrant family's journey arriving in the kingdom of Hawaii and everything that happened since then. And it was a struggle to tell the story because it's a story of my family, but I also wanted it to be an educational opportunity to provide a different look perhaps on the immigrant experience of what happens several generations on when there is no longer a strong connection to the culture and the language and the physical place itself, and how that affects the family several generations on. Because Danielle, in your film, of course, the way that you look might not indicate, be the best indicator of how you feel.
It's interesting that you sort of, you're kind of, well, it's not interesting. It's obvious that it's special to you because it is your family story. And again, if you haven't seen the film, it's the process of unearthing Dohi's story, and you're going through it with sort of bits and pieces of like whatever you can have, and you actually you travel back to Japan. But now this film becomes like another bit and piece in family story. You use a lot of like family photos to illustrate the timeline. Can you tell us a little bit of your process of how you source that photos? I'm curious if there was any hesitation to share such sort of legacy family photos into this very public film.
That's an interesting question, because the photos and the letters in the film were really one of the main characters, but we didn't realize it throughout our lives because these letters were from people we didn't know. And so as the story began to unfold, we realized, oh my gosh, these letters and photos are extremely important. And they ended up being the key to us unlocking this family mystery. I felt that I had to share the letters and the photos because they're such a key part of the story. And I also know that I think I know for sure that no one in the photos is still alive today. And so that made it a little bit easier. But I was careful to not share details about where the families are living today, just to provide a little bit of privacy. One thing that a Japanese national friend shared with me is that I might not want to have shared the family record in the film, but I also felt that those that are listed on our family record are also no longer alive. And I felt that it was important to share that. And perhaps that speaks a little to my background as a genealogist. I wanted this film to also serve, like I said, as an educational tool for those who are interested in perhaps pursuing more information about their family in Japan, because it was such a struggle for us that I want to share this process with people.
I was like, oh, I'm surprised that the records office, like I was kind of surprised that you're able to capture that on camera, just kind of feeling that sensitivity. But I think you kind of talked to it a little bit in the film, like the woman, what you felt that she wanted to help you in that search. And so it kind of helped drive the story along even further for me to kind of be on this like treasure hunt. So congratulations on that. Taking a similar note to Danielle, your film also explores that sort of how family legacy can travel oceans a bit. Can you talk a little bit of what you may have discovered in assembling your documentary? If I recall, you go back and you interview some relatives about their experience as Chinese folk in their neighborhood. Share a little bit about that for the audience.
Something I deeply discovered is country definitely affects how people think about themselves. So if you've seen the film, you'll know that there is a person in Trinidad who challenged me quite a bit in terms of my identity and did not believe that I was Trinidadian based on solely where I was born. And then there are other people who are like, no, you're absolutely Trinidadian. And I think from a Canadian perspective, Canada and specifically Toronto are very multicultural, and we tend to have this idea that wherever you're from, you bring that to Canada, and that's the Canadian nationality. is this kind of melange. So people are often saying, you know, I'm Chinese Canadian, I'm French Canadian, I'm British Canadian. We're very hyphenated, versus my parents and their generation in Trinidad don't necessarily see themselves as that. They don't necessarily see themselves as Chinese Caribbean. They see themselves as Caribbean. So that's what I discovered the most, that it changes. There wasn't this kind of universal standard or universal way to identify.
You say in the film, in your sort of defense of like, no, I am Trinidadian, because you grew up in the culture. This is how my family, and you know nothing else otherwise. And I believe the metropolis had a thriving community. It kind of resonated with me because there've been bits of my life where people question my Filipino-ness just because I don't kick it with a gang of Filipinos or whatever, a group of Filipinos. So just sort of having to defend, like, no, in my heart, I am Filipino. Why are you questioning me? Like, I really connected to that, and I really rode hard with you on that.
Yeah, it's that feeling that that many people have, that we're not enough. We're not enough to be Filipino. We're not enough to be Caribbean. And it's like, to whose standard are we trying to meet? So
thank you for sharing. Let's move to set. So your subjects, if I remember correctly, one's the auntie's Pinay, Hector's Latinx, correct? Two different cultures, but very gracefully, it almost feels like one family because you really balance their stories very well. I'm most curious about the auntie, and it's the Filipino-ness coming out. Like, how you said you had a relationship with the auntie, but like to kind of be present in her, which is getting ready for work, and she's sort of sharing her day-to-day. It feels very verite. It doesn't feel performative at all. Like, how much time did you spend with her, or with both of your subjects, and I guess maybe how much footage did you cut down for this piece, because it feels like you spent a lot of time with them?
Yes, I think I had about 12 hours of footage total for the 25-minute piece, and we filmed with both of them. Oh, can folks hear me? Hello?
No, yeah, my AirPods died. Sorry, keep going.
Okay, sorry. Okay, and we filmed with them for about the same amount of time. Before I started filming with them, I had a call first with them to check in. Hey, you know, we're doing this documentary about the Health for All campaign, and curious if you'd be interested in participating. I always tell people that, you know, Ligaya Romero, another Filipino documentary filmmaker, they talk about how, you know, inspired by Adrienne Marie Brown, when we work in film, we also, especially nonfiction, with other people's stories, being able to make sure that there's consent culture that we practice, and working at the speed of trust is something that I always try to embody in the work, you know, because as a person from the community also, I've experienced where other people try to like vulture over my story, and I don't want to replicate that practice with other folks. So when I had that initial call with Tita Emma, I wanted to ask her, you know, so this is what we're doing. I'm curious if you'd be open to me filming you like throughout like times that you're just doing things, you know, like whether you're at the Filipino Worker Center or working with your client. And the day actually that we filmed with her client was the second day of our production. And I came into their home. I drove Tita Emma from where she lives. Where she lives and where her client lives is pretty far, and she usually takes the bus because she doesn't drive. It usually takes her like 2 hours to get there. So I ended up driving her. And when I drove her to her client's home, I came in there with the thinking that I might be able to film today with the client, but I also might not. You know, I didn't want to impose myself into the space if they were uncomfortable. And I think the fact that her client trusted Emma, and the fact that Emma trusted me, was like this chain of trust that, you know, made them feel okay with me filming with them. And, you know, I think also I came in there with the expectation that, you know, like nothing is going to be guaranteed, right? And if I came out of there without having filmed anything, that's okay, because I believe, especially in when we try to film verite, things happen throughout the course of a person's year, you know, that we might be able to capture eventually when they're feeling more comfortable. And that's kind of the ethos that I came into filming.
just to follow up, how about what was it like following Hector and their work? Not to compare, but Hector's work, I mean, it's very delicate in terms of the fight that they're leading, right? So what was that like?
I think with Hector, actually, it was a little easier to film them, actually, because their work is a little bit more public. You know, we go to Sacramento, you know, and film them, you know, whereas Emma's work, Tita Emma's work is in the privacy of someone's home, right? And I think there's more delicateness that I needed to navigate that space with. What was more, I think, required more vulnerability is when we were filming with Hector, even in the interview in their own home, and, you know, making sure that they felt autonomy over how their story is being told through this piece. But when we were filming in Sacramento, you know, there was a lot of camera already, like during this day of action that was happening. So I think it was less of an issue in that setting.
Thank you for sharing, Seth. Let's move to William, just kind of continuing the thought of telling a story that's not yours initially. So Atsuko, if the audience is not yet familiar with Atsuko and her work, you know, Atsuko is an artist and a comedian. You could follow her on IG, and hopefully she'll be able to join us in this conversation soon. How involved, or did you guys collaborate to tell her story? Because there's a lot of sort of like naked or sort of like vulnerable glimpses to Atsuko's teenage life, Atsuko's like sort of like frank, you know, acknowledgement of like, what, like I'm just going to be the best, you know, cheerleader I can be. Tell us a little bit about the process of, I guess, working with Atsuko in the storytelling.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's definitely like a really bad history in documentary of sort of imposing outside narratives and forcing people to divulge stuff they don't want to. And so I know in my own work and like in Define American, we're really trying to like, it's not that, you know, you're telling someone else's story, you're trying to help them tell their story and sort of help advocate for them, but ultimately like feeling out where they're comfortable and making sure that they're not being taken advantage of. It's easier with Atsuko because she is like such a public personality and has acted and stuff and is comedian and has given professional interviews. So she's a little more savvy on like knowing what she doesn't want to share. But a lot of stuff just like, you know, sharing earlier cuts of the film with her to make sure like, you know, are you good with this? Is there anything in here you don't want? Like, is this, you know, and getting that thumbs up and that, you know, checking along the way.
So she was present sort of, or her eyes were on it through the creation of the film.
Yeah, so I shared a sort of rough cut as I was doing the animation to check with her to make sure that everything, and she gave the thumbs up. She was happy with everything in the film. And then we had worked, like, you know, we filmed with her and sort of felt out like where she was comfortable to talk about and what she didn't want to talk about and stuff like that.
I wanted to reserve this for Atsuko and hopefully she'll join, but like Atsuko's work has been in the festival before. She did a film about her grandmother and her mother. I was curious if were they present at all as or how did Atsuko maybe sort of incorporate them into the process of working with you for this film?
Yeah, I know she was having some trouble connecting. They weren't present at the filming. I'm not sure if she's ended up sending them a cut or not.
Thank you for sharing, William. So let's go ahead and move to Amber. I'd like to know maybe how, I'm guessing that your mom was maybe part of your process and how the story was told, or you should ask this person for this photo. Maybe shed light on that, what that relationship was like, because it's not just, or it is mom, but it's also my subject is trying to tell me what to do, or like, how did you work through that?
Yes, I'm an only child, and my mom and I are very close in certain ways. And because we're both very interested in genealogy, it wasn't ever an effort to get her to want to look at things and talk about things. But as is very typical in Asian families, the conversations often stopped before they got really interesting to me. And it was really challenging to get her to talk about the more sensitive details of the story. And in one of the interviews that we shot, it was extremely emotional, and she's crying so hard that you can't understand what she's saying. And I had never been able to get her to talk before about her experiences growing up extremely poor in a sugar plantation camp. And but so I wanted to be able to share the story, but also be respectful to my mom and my family, and say it in a way that people understood the depth of her grief, but also not make it so much about this pain that she's holding and not wanting to share with the world. And for the photos, all of those photos are literally from one letter that was sent to my grandmother, sent from my grandmother's cousin. So their fathers were brothers. And in this envelope were this set of photos, and all the photos that I'm using in the film are from that one letter. And when we finally made it to Japan and we showed these photos, my mom's cousin's wife, who you'll meet in the film, she says, "Oh yeah, this is so-and-so, this is so-and-so. These are all her in-laws, her brothers and sisters-in-law." It was absolutely incredible, but the barrier was language. For years, my mom had asked friends to translate these letters for her, and they didn't really mean any. I shouldn't say it that way. We didn't understand the significance of who the people were who were sending the letters and writing the letters. And my mom didn't recall any stories that her mother and father had shared about family in Japan. And like she says in the film, I knew we had to have family in Japan because they didn't come from nowhere, but nobody talked about it. No one talked about the family. And all of my mom's grandparents died shortly before she was born or after she was born. So she grew up without grandparents. I also grew up without grandparents. Only my dad's mother was still alive when I was born, and she lived in California. So it was a very isolated life, and my mom always struggled with wanting to share family and culture with me. But what do you share if there's not much to share? And she had this envelope of photos, and she said, "I don't know who these people are, but we have these photos." So we wanted to find out, who are these people and who are these letters from?
It's a film, Mom. What you have is the beginning of a film.
Yeah, and I say that in the film. I says, well, we got to make a film to keep track of who these people are, because it was a lot to untangle, or to weave together, I should say. We
Thank you
wove
very
together
much
the story.
Like I said earlier, like it is your family story, but I think it sheds light in a very personal way of the Hawaii that the continent of the US understands it to be. And it's not like a lecture per se, but it's an invitation to sort of be connected to how that state and the folks on that land, came together. Let's move to Danielle. Your film also is, I'm admittedly so, I'm not aware of sort of the documentation of Hong Kong Chinese coming to the Caribbean, or Chinese coming to the Caribbean in general. And I feel like your film and then the author that you interview as well, like those are very sort of valuable things that are adding to the conversation. I'm curious if your family has seen your film and what they think of your sort of pursuit for this narrative. Like,
You know what? I've had really positive experience showing my family, telling my family. I was scared, obviously, to show them, but they're all really proud, and they're all really happy of what I've done. And I've had a lot of people of my mom's generation really start to think about, oh, I wonder if my son feels the same way about his identity. Like they've never thought about how the younger generations are going to carry this on. So they've been pretty proud, pretty good.
how about the subjects in your film, in particular, the one that challenged you? Have they seen the finished product, and has their position changed in your pursuit of this?
I don't know. She hasn't seen it. She's an amazing doctor, and she's a frontline worker right now, and she's fighting COVID in Atlanta. So I did say, hey, whenever you have a time, I'm going to send you a private screener. Let me know, but no rush. But she's great, and I still talk to her, and we may disagree on things, but ultimately we still share a bond.
I feel like you should do a reaction video of them watching the film, because I would love to see how that plays out. to set, I'm curious, it has Tita Emma and Hector seen the film, and how have they, and also folks in your extended community, how do they feel about the story that you brought onto the screen?
Yeah, similar to what William was talking about earlier. Every time we had a cut of coverage, we would share the film with our protagonists. Tita Emma would watch it each time. Hector, I didn't realize that every time I sent it to them, actually they wouldn't watch it because they were, what did they tell me? They were like nervous to see themselves on screen. So the first time that they saw it was when we had this community premiere at the Downtown Independent here in LA. And it was their first time seeing it together. And if you see, that was also Hector and Tita Emma's first time meeting each other. If you see them interact, they're so adorable together. It sounds like they're like these, like, you know, like super serious, you know, badasses, you know. But like if you see them, like they're really bubbly people, and it's so beautiful, you know, how that kind of, you know, comes across in the way that they just kind of live their lives. We've also shared the film with different community members across the country, especially undocumented folks. We've been doing screenings with different community partners. We actually had one in April, I think, which was really interesting. We had a national virtual screening with folks from all over the country. The story of the film, again, is about Health for All campaign in California, but we had folks in Minnesota, in the South, in you know, like all over the country, where you'd think that the issue of undocumented people's access to healthcare wouldn't be such a big thing. But then we saw like folks responding to the film in such a rich way. At the end of the film, you know, we also had a tribute to Tita Maddie. Tita Maddie was one of our Health for All leaders who passed away 4 years ago. You know, she was battling cancer as an undocumented, uninsured woman, but still being very much involved in Health for All. And we paid tribute to her at the end of the film, if you get to see the credits of the film. And actually, if you go to 18 Million Rising's website, movementletters.org, you'll see a letter also that was dedicated to Tita Maddie by her daughter, Madison. So I think so far it's been a really rich experience. And we wanted to center the you know, undocumented audiences in this film, because often when we have films about undocumented experiences, especially in an election year like this, it's usually for the gaze of citizens so that they would vote on behalf of undocumented people, assuming that we're powerless, right? But we know that undocumented people are anything but powerless. And we really wanted to make sure that this film catered to undocumented audiences, especially the audiences of the protagonists, like, you know, Filipino people, Latinx people, and for that, intentionally, the film is in English, Spanish, and Tagalog.
Sorry, I'm like touching all the things on my iPad. The being a SoCal girl, just hearing the English and the Tagalog and the Spanish feels so home-like to me, and it's done so naturally. So congratulations on first of all pairing these subjects together. Just to speak to William's point earlier, the stories of undocumented folks aren't limited to Latinx. It's all sorts of humans from all sorts of countries. But you've done your story in a way that kind of like, it felt like you're inviting us to a family home, where we're kind of meeting Hector doing their thing and Tita Emma doing their thing. But on that note, I got word from the Zoom gods that Atsuko, who's the subject of Atukos Story, is in the audience. I'm going to invite Atsuko to turn on their camera. Hey, welcome to the panel. Goodbye. Well, welcome back to the panel. So Atsuko, if you can very safely tell us, I was talking to William earlier of what the process was like and how William worked with you to tell your story. Could you let us know, I guess, what your feelings were when you were approached to tell a very personal story in such a broad public platform?
Yeah, hi. Sorry that my husband keeps calling me on the other end. And if I keep disappearing, it's because, anyway, yeah. I'm married. I'm taken. No, that's not what you asked. Well, public platform. So I'm a comedian, and so I'm pretty used to telling my story, or stories to the public. And immigration is such a like big. I'm an immigrant. I was formerly undocumented. It's an issue that's like close to my heart, and so anytime there's like a medium to be able to share it with people, that's I'm always so down. And I love Define American and working with them. And so, William being from that org, I was super into do it.
I'm curious if your family has seen the finished work. I was telling William earlier, like I am familiar with your mother and your grandmother because of your other films at the festival. Have they seen the animated piece from William and what their feelings are?
Yeah, my grandma watched it. My mom doesn't super watch things that I'm a part of or do. Yeah, my grandma was more like excited to see how she was portrayed, because she was, in her words, she was like, "Oh, I look so young the way he animated me." Anyway, so it was more about vanity.
Well, if you could secure love from the grandma, William, you won. So congratulations on that. We are approaching the hour, and I want to make sure we can find out how to follow you and continue supporting your work. Let's go with Danielle. What's next for you, and what's next for the film? Has the film been out on the festival for a bit?
No, we started our festival tour in August. It will be in Toronto at 2 festivals in November, and then more hopefully in the future. So that's.
And what's next for you? Are you is there another story up your sleeve?
I'm actually returning to fiction. I'm returning to fiction, and I'm working on my next sitcom. So I'm kind of switching gears at this point.
I can't wait to see more work from you. William, what's next for the film, and what's next for you?
Sure, yeah. So it's been going to several festivals. We've been really lucky to be able to show it a couple places. Everything's a little up in the air because of COVID. So some stuff is online, some stuff is kind of postponed indefinitely. And then a lot of Define American continues to make videos. So you can visit our website, defineamerican.com, or we have a YouTube channel if you search Define American on YouTube, where we post a lot of similar kind of videos, profiles about immigrants, explainer videos, stuff you can send to friends and family, stuff like that.
We love the work at Define American. Briefly, Atsuko, would love to know what's next for you. I follow you on IG. You have like little talk show things I'm seeing. What's happening for you next?
Well, right now I'm live streaming a show from Inside a Monster once a month called Ohio, which William actually animated like the opening sequence for it. And it's just like a sort of, it's a way for people to deal with the pandemic without talking about it. And so I just host it from inside a monster's stomach instead of like home because of a pandemic. So more just shows like that. Yeah.
I can't, I should check it out because it's safe inside a monster stomach. It's much more safer than my home. So I can't wait to see it. Let's move on to Amber. What's next for the film and next for you as a filmmaker?
So the film, we've had really great timing because we went to one festival and everything shut down. That was back in March for the Disorient Film Festival in Eugene, Oregon. And it was a great experience, but unfortunately every other screening that we've had has been online, but grateful for all the screenings. And next is HIF, Hawaii International Film Festival. So very excited, that's starting next month. And for me personally, I am in a graduate program at the University of Hawaii for museum studies and combining museum and archival studies. So I really want to, I want to help people. I want to help people on this journey. And I also volunteer with the Japanese Immigration to Hawaii Museum that was featured in our film. So I'm specifically interested in helping Japanese people in Hawaii and other parts of the US find their relatives. So I'm findingdohi.com. If anybody wants to talk to me, I just put myself out there as someone who can help.
Oh, I hope that there might be another story that you can document and bring to the screen.
I hope so too. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. And for Set, what is next for you? You're not busy at all, Anak. Tell us what's happening for you.
For folks that want to check out other screenings of Coverage, we're going to be in a few more festivals until November. Please go to cover-age.org. And if you also want to sign up to host your own community screening and bring the conversation around immigrant health justice to your community, you can also do that in the webpage. I'm also one of the co-founders of the Undocumented Filmmakers Collective. In case anyone would be interested in, joining us, if you're an undocumented filmmaker yourself or formerly undocumented person. I see Atsuko here, is also one. We're really having conversations to shift the way the industry talks about undocumented people, not just as subjects, but also as storytellers of our own story and audiences for whom stories should be told. One of the LAAPFF LA Asian staff members, Josen, is also one of our members. So just giving a good shout out to them. Also my younger sibling, actually. I'm working on a doc feature that I've been working on for the last 5 years and finally getting to sink my teeth into it. That kind of explores the issues of folks that are undocumented who also happen to have a disability. So we'll make sure to share that with folks once it comes out. Hopefully we come back to LA Asian in a couple of years.
The resilience of documentary filmmakers, it's uncomparable. I always worship at the feet of nonfiction storytelling, because you guys have to wait through everything that is thrown at you. And just to continue Set's note, their colleagues over at the Undocumented Filmmakers Collective put together a short program called Undocu Cinema, which is available on our watch site now. It is a pay what you can program. It's available all throughout the month. Please do check it out. It is fabulous storytelling from folks who have not yet found a larger platform yet, and we're excited for when that happens more so. That wraps it up. I feel like a talk show host. That wraps it up. We are at the end of our hour. Thank you for joining us for this conversation. If you like this conversation and our film festival lineup, please consider donating to Visual Communications. Your support helps the squad exist all year round for programs. It helps us make a festival just like this for you guys and for audiences just like you. Please stick around for the next conversation. It is my colleague and friend Kirby sitting down with the shorts program Revel, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and follow us on social media on all handles at VC Film Festival, and use the hashtag LAAPFF 2020. That's it for me. No more talking for me. Thank you guys for sharing. And again, check out these films. They're on the watch site now, available throughout the month. It's called what is it called? Oh, Looking for Home. It's called Looking for Home. It's called Looking for Home. And I'll see you guys next time. Thank you all.
Thanks so much.
Bye.